Okay, so today we're going to look at Love's Philosophy, written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and it is from the poet's perspective. He's probably encouraging a woman to have a relationship with him in this poem, and he's probably writing it as a means of convincing her to pursue this relationship. So, it starts out with the fountains mingle with the river, and the idea is that things in nature, or things all around us in the real world, actually are socializing, and the idea of them mingling is kind of important. It says that they're engaging with one another and that they're having a good time. So the fountains mingle with the river, they've got a relationship basically. And similarly, if you go on to the second line, it is the same with the rivers and the ocean. And he keeps doing that, and he does that in both the stanzas, and we'll see there's a slight difference when it comes to stanza 2, and we'll have a look at that too. So afterwards it talks about the winds of heaven, they mix forever. So those are your two words here, mix and mingle. And they sound very harmless, they sound very friendly. It's basically a very sociable relationship that these things all around them have with one another. And it talks about a sweet emotion, so it's got positive connotations. So the kind of relationship that these things in nature have with one another is good. It's not a bad relationship that they have at all. He moves on in line 5 to say, nothing in the world is single. Nothing, absolutely nothing. So he's saying that everything needs a partner, everything needs somebody to be with, basically. In this way, he's actually hinting to the person that he's writing to, this female, that she shouldn't be single either, and neither should Shelley himself as well, again hinting that they should be in this relationship. Moving on, he talks about all things by a law divine, and this part's really interesting actually. It's got some good context going on as well. So by a law divine would be God's law. And so he's saying God's law says that all things in one another's being mingle. Everything has a relationship, and that's how God intends it to be. So he's saying that from a religious perspective, God wants us to have a relationship, which is interesting considering that Shelley is actually an atheist, and he doesn't believe in God at all. So the idea of him saying that it's God's law is probably this kind of religious blackmail that he's using for this to this girl to have this relationship with him. At the end of the stanza, he says, why not I with thine? So he says, well, look, everything else has got a relationship, everything else is mixing and mingling, why don't we do the same? God wants us to be the same, so, why aren't we in this relationship as well? He moves on in the second stanza to say, see the mountains kiss high heaven and the waves clasp one another. Again, you've got this kind of repetition, a similar kind of structure, which is things around him, the mountains, the waves, they're clasping one another, they're kissing high heavens, so the sky as well. However, it's a little bit different now. So in the first stanza we had mix and mingle up here, and now we've got kiss and clasp, which is really interesting because mix and mingle seems a little bit more innocent, a little bit more sociable, whereas kiss and clasp becomes a bit more physical. And so the further the poem goes along, the more intimate the relationship is that he's wanting with this female. And so it's subtly getting more and more physical. He moves on to say, no sister flower would be forgiven if it disdained its brother. So the sister flower is probably a metaphor for her, and he's saying that I will not forgive you if you disdain me. And he's not talking about incest and her being his sister and them having that kind of relationship. He's basically saying female, male, and he's not going to forgive her if you disdain, or if she disdains him, basically, if she insults him by rejecting him. So that's what he's talking about there. A little bit more blackmail, a little bit more sinister in terms of his motivations. He moves on to say, and the sunlight clasps the earth and the moonbeams kiss the sea. Again, you've got this kiss, clasp, kiss, a very physical semantic field. It's much more intimate, it's much more physical. So this is the kind of relationship that he's looking for. It's sounding like it's very lustful in this kind of case, and that's the kind of relationship that Shelley wants. At the end, again, a similar kind of structure as the first stanza. It ends with a question. He says, what are all these kissings worth? These kissings in nature, all of these relationships that you can spot around him, if thou kiss not me. So he says, well, what is all of this worth if you don't kiss me? And it's kind of repeating the same structure, but at the same time there's the suggestion that he's despairing because she won't love him back, basically. And so he wants this relationship, she's rejecting him, I think in terms of the context, she would reject him because she's likely to wait for marriage, for him to be able to, for them to be able to have a physical relationship. So in this case, he's despairing. He wants something a little bit sooner, a little bit more lustful, and she won't give in to him.